What's up, everybody? This is Chris, back again with my co-host Ty. This is the Pedal Dance Podcast, and Ty, how you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well, Chris. So today we are doing our top 10 from the Jungle set of the TCG world.
Indeed, and I'm super excited for this one because Jungle's personally my favorite set of all time. So I'm really looking forward to this. Ty, how do you feel about the Jungle set? Is it one of your favorites, least favorites?
Well, Jungle is actually probably one of the first sets that I got the most cards from whenever I first started my collection. As a matter of fact, most of my first cards did come from the Jungle set. And I will get more into detail about that as we're going through our list, I would think.
All right. Well, okay, before we start with honorable mentions, because I'm pretty sure both of us have some, I just want to clarify a couple of mistakes I made in the last video. One of them being that during part of the episode, it cut out whenever I was talking. And we had a really bad edit on it, so if that was really noticeable, I am really sorry about that. And another thing, whenever I was talking about Hitmonchan, I accidentally gave false information. Instead of doing 30 damage for one fighting energy, he does 20. Which, I mean, it still does enough, especially because back then you had plus power, which adds an extra damage counter of power to the attacks. So, it still works. And besides that, shout out to honorable mentions that I didn't list, plus power and defender. So now, with that out of the way, it is time to start. Who went first last time?
Uh, why do I feel like it was you that went first last time?
Yeah, I think it was. I think you went first with the honorable mentions, and I went first with the actual list.
Something like that.
Yeah, so I'll go first this time with honorable mentions, and then you can start with the list.
Okay.
All right, so my honorable mentions, I have three. The first one is Snorlax. I love the card. I love Snorlax as a Pokemon. Snorlax, my main deck has Snorlax sleeves, and I love it. My wife bought them for me. I thought they were really cool. But whenever I was younger, just that ability, it cannot be paralyzed, burned, or confused, but it cannot use this ability while it's either a paralyzed, burned, or confused. I don't get it. So just for that alone, that confusion, it is on my honorable mentions. Nidoqueen is also on my honorable mentions. I love Nidoqueen. It's personally my favorite out of the two between Nidoking and Nidoqueen. And I would have put it on the list maybe if it wasn't for the one of the attacks needing Nidoking on your bench to do more damage. So because of that one thing right there, I put it on my honorable mentions. And last but not least is Fearow. Why did I put Fearow on my honorable mention? Simple, because I prefer Fearow over Pidgeot. That's just me. And
Oh.
that's the reason why I put him on my list. Well, honorable mention list. So, Ty, what's
Well,
going on with your own?
I do want to say though that Firo is in fact easier to evolve in comparison because it's got one less evolution than the Pidgeot evolution. So, but my honorable mention, I had to give that one to Flareon simply because it was a card that I loved using in the Game Boy Color games.
Okay, fair enough. So, without further ado, Ty number 10.
Okay, my number 10 is Rhyhorn. It was one of the very first cards that I had ever gotten. I got it from my cousin in Texas, and he just gave me a handful of cards, and that was just one of them. And to this day, I can't see that Rhyhorn without thinking of my cousin. So, and it gets a little darker than that. I'm not sure how dark we want to go, but no, back in January this year, that same cousin of mine also committed suicide. So, and a lot of these cards are going to be ones that he gave to me.
I got you.
Yeah. All
Okay.
right. So, what's your number 10, Chris?
My number 10 is actually Venomoth. I put Venomoth at number 10 because while its attack wasn't very good, its ability was crazy good. Once per turn, you could actually change the type of Venomoth to any other type on your side of the field. So if you have a fire type, you could change its type to fire, or and you just could not change it colorless, which was fine. But any other typing, there's a lot of possibilities with that. Especially back then, whenever there wasn't so much going on with the game.
That almost sounds like a Kecleon ability.
It does.
So,
It was Kecleon before Kecleon was a thing.
yeah, I know, right?
So with that, tied number 9.
Okay, so number 9 is Venonat. Not only was it a card that my cousin gave me, it was also a card that I seem to use a lot in the TCG game on the Game Boy Color as well, and it's just overall very aesthetically pleasing. I think because like I mean you know it evolves, you have it up there, you're feeling really good about it, right? So like because in order to get Venomoth, you need Venonat. So that's why it's my number 9.
It's a
And
big
yeah, I know, right? But you need your basics. But
agree.
so how about you, Chris? What's your number 9?
My number 9 is Butterfree. Why do I
Staying
have
on the
Butterfree?
bugs.
Yeah, yeah. I have a feeling we're going to hear a whole lot more bug Pokemon later on in the list. Just a feeling. But this one isn't too much behind it. Whenever I was a kid, it was one of my favorite arts of all time. I never minded pulling this card, even though it wasn't a rare or anything. It was an uncommon, but it was still one of my favorite artworks of all time. In not just in Jungle, but in the entire TCG around this time. So just for that reason, Butterfree's number 9 for me. So tied number 8.
Okay, for me, my number 8 is Oddish. I really like the fact that it looks like kind of like it's made out of clay or what have you. Like there's just something about that card I never could get past the imagery on it. But I always used it on the Game Boy Color for the TCG game is on there, and it was also one of the cards that my cousin gave me. So and yeah, so that's why I ended up putting it on that list as my number 8. Plus, it does evolve, so that's why I have a tendency to favor the basic Pokemon, is because you do need to get them out first before you can just evolve your Pokemon. What about you, Chris? What's your number 8?
My number 8 is Pokeball. I just
That is a
felt
good.
bad. I just felt bad because it's the only trainer in the set. Funny enough.
Yeah.
But it's just for that reason. I just wanted to put it on my list so it didn't feel left out.
Well, it
What?
is a good card. It's a good card. I will give you
It's a
that. But I
helpful
just yeah, oh yes, especially when you have it in your hand. So
agree.
yeah. All
All
right,
right.
so
So number 7.
all right, my number 7. I figure since 7 is considered a lucky number, when am I feeling luckiest? When I'm getting paid. So who do we know pertains to getting paid? That'd be Meow with his move Payday. And as a matter of fact, the artwork on the card is even him sitting in a stack of cash, and that is Meow.
You're so cheesy.
Hey, I wanted to link it somehow. Besides, I live next to a bunch of casinos, so and
Gotcha.
the address for the Hard Rock is actually 777 Beach Boulevard.
Nice.
I know, right? So that's really funny. But yeah, but it was also one of the cards that my cousin gave me as well, and I always had a habit of using it well, in the Game Boy Color game as well. But I really liked using it because anytime you did use Payday on the Game Boy Color game, you actually got real life coins out of it too.
Yes,
So that's why it's my lucky number 7.
I
What?
gotcha.
Yeah, what's your number 7, Chris?
Number 7. All right, number 7 for me is Kangaskhan.
Not a
I have a
bad
few
choice.
reasons why. Huh?
I said not a bad choice.
No, it's a good card. Yes, it has a bad weakness in fighting, but there's a lot of good things about it. High HP for 1 energy. Draw a card. And then it had the monstrous attack of Comet Punch. And you flip 4 coins, it does 20 damage times the number of heads. So on the max, you can do 80 damage. And back in this time, there wasn't a lot of Pokemon that had more than 80 HP. So if you got lucky, you were knocking out in one, well, not one turn because you needed 4 turns to get energy, but you know what I mean. Or 2 double colorless because it's 4 colorless energy. But you get what I mean. In one
Yep.
attack, you could potentially do a 1-hit knockout.
Mhm.
So good HP. It had 90 HP. The holographic is beautiful.
They
Um,
usually are.
yeah, fetch was really nifty whenever you needed a little draw power. So yeah, that's basically the reason why it is my number 7. So tied number 6.
Okay, my number 6 is Nidoran, the female one. Uh, okay, this was also one of the very first cards I was ever given. And on top of that, I remember it having Call for Family, which was very, very helpful because it could help you get a bunch of Nidoran out there on the bench to, kind of help you aid in getting your Nidoqueen or what have you. So that was a very, very helpful move. Uh, I constantly used it in the TCG on the Game Boy Color as well, and so and so yeah, those are my reasons for it being at number 6. And I know it sounds like my first half of the list is pretty much all had my same reasons, but that's the way it works sometimes.
Nothing wrong
What
with
about
that.
you, Chris? What's your number 6?
My number 6 is Rapidash. One of my favorite Pokemon from the original generation. Fire type, good type. But the main thing for me, oh, by the way, no retreat cost for a stage 1.
Nice.
Crazy. But the main reason is the second attack agility. 2 fires, 1 colorless. It does 30, so it didn't do a lot. But when you flip a coin afterwards, and if heads, you prevent all effects of attacks, including damage. So if you flipped heads, if you kept flipping heads every single turn, they couldn't attack. They couldn't do anything. So you would just stall them out until you knocked them out. And I had a lot of fun doing that. It didn't happen often, but when it did, I enjoyed it. So with that, Rapidash is my number 7 Pokemon card from number 6, my bad. Tied, number 5.
Okay, well, before that, I wanted to say you mentioned the retreat cost. That was something I wish I had known more about as a little kid. Like that was like, yeah, when I was little, I did not know the meaning of the word retreat, like literally and physically, for that matter. I just left my cards out there till they died.
See, I thought that's what you could do. I didn't have any idea that you could actually retreat or switch or anything.
Yeah, that would have been so nice to have known. Honestly, probably would have saved me a couple of times too, for that matter, maybe. But yeah, so my number 5 is the Lonely Cubone
Of
because
course.
I just thought the artwork was just really adorable. Also, one of the first cards that I was gifted, And I also consistently used it in the TCG as well, for that matter, on the Game Boy Color, because that was the number one way that I played cards back in the day, was on that Game Boy Color. So yeah, it's just something you just can't seem to miss. And then, well, of course, when you evolved it into Marowak and finally got that card, it did pretty well. So yeah, that's why Cubone's at my number 5. So, what about you, Chris? What's your number 5?
Before I get to number 5, Marowak. It was one of the worst Marowak cards to ever be released because of what it did, but it was still a cool card to look at. It's just,
Well, I
it
mean,
just
it helped you live longer because you had more APH. That's how I looked at things back in the day. The more
right.
APH it had, the more I just wanted to deal it out there, because it gave me better chances of staying alive.
Yeah, I got you. It's just when you look at it and you see the attacks and how high they were for what little bit they do, it's kind of sad. It's like they under.
I don't remember Marowak as much as I remember Cubone having Call for Family, but that's why Cubone's my number 5, not necessarily Marowak.
but but I do know Marowak, and it had Call for Family for 3 energy.
Oh, yeah, that's not good.
Right. But okay, moving on. Number 5 for me is Vaporeon.
Okay.
I put Vaporeon on my list for one simple reason. Ty, do you know that reason?
Uh, well, it could be the artwork, but I doubt it.
I do like the artwork, but Vaporeon's my favorite evolution.
Oh yeah, of course.
So I am being
And
biased on that.
well, yeah, I mean, I try to give you the benefit of the doubt. And speaking of which, I meant to add that to my honorable mention as well, for that matter, because I just remembered that it did not make my list.
But yeah, that's honestly the only reason Vaporeon's on this list, is because I have such a big bias for it. I love Vaporeon.
That's fair. I think that's fair. Like, your favorite Pokemon just instantly also becomes one of your favorite cards.
Right.
Yeah.
No matter how bad it is.
Alright, so we're ready for number 4?
We are.
Okay, so my number 4 is Tauros.
Ooh, I didn't even think about putting Tauros. Nice.
Yeah, so it was one of the first cards that I'd gotten as well, for that matter. Constantly used it in the TCG, and once it was up there, I felt pretty cocky, what have you. But it was known to get me a few prize cards back in the day, so that's why Tauros is my number 4. So, how about you, Chris? What's your number 4?
My number 4 is
Yep.
Pinsir. Pinsir. One of my favorite Pokemon from the gen. I know I say that a lot, but it is. I love Gen 1 Pokemon. Now, don't get me wrong. There are some stupid Pokemon in Gen 1, but when they hit the mark, they hit the mark. And they really did with Pinsir. It just looks amazing. And this card was really good because 2 Grass Energy, yeah, it does 20 damage, not that much. But flip a coin, heads, paralysis. They cannot retreat. They cannot attack. They just have to wait. And you keep building up until you get another, either 2 more energy or a double colorless, and hit Guillotine for 50. It was a really good, really powerful card. Not the strongest in the world, but at the time, that was a really good card. And the holographic is beautiful as well. Like Ty said, as in most cases with holographic cards. But for that
Yep.
reason, and I loved it when I got to use it in the Pokemon card game for the Game Boy Color. It was such a good card. But for that reason, yeah, that's my number 4. Ty, number 3.
Okay, so my number 3 is Licky Tongue. Also, one of the cards that I was gifted. Didn't really use it as much in the Game Boy Color for some reason or another, but whenever I did, it was very helpful, for that matter. And I just like the way it looks, because Licky Tongue, you see a long tongue, and he would be grabbing fruit off a tree. So the artwork is really uh, the idealistic capture for Lickitung in itself, in my opinion. So and that's what makes it aesthetically pleasing to look at. What about you, Chris? What's your number three?
First, I want to say, nice number 3 pick. I respect that. I like Lickitung.
Mm-hmm.
But my number 3 is Mr. Mime.
Okay.
This card was so good. Its ability, if any of your attacks, if any of your opponent's attacks does 30 or more damage, it does not work on Mr. Mime.
Oh.
So you better hope you have a Pokemon that has a low attack, like an attack with low damage, because if not, you're just not doing anything. And its attack, 10 plus. Doesn't sound good. Wait till you hear this. It does an extra damage counter, which is 10 HP. It does an extra damage counter for each damage counter that's already on your opponent's Pokemon. So let's say they have just for laughs, let's say they have a Charizard, and it already has 6 damage counters on it. It's already had 60 HP, and it's down to 60. For a Psychic and Colorless, doing 10 plus 60 for the damage counters, that's 70. That's a knockout. It was so good back in the day, because everybody always tried to get these Pokemon with high attacks and stuff like that, thinking that they were just going to use brute force just to win. This card shut that down. It was such an OP card back then. And a lot of people hated it, playing against it, myself included. But when I actually got to use it, I loved it. So for those reasons, Mr. Mime is my number 3. Ty, hit that numero dos.
Well, I would, but I wanted to go over Mr. Mime real quick because that wasn't a card that I didn't get to own it. I didn't really get to use it in the TCG because I don't think I got that far into it or what have you. But yeah, I got to agree with you that is definitely a wholesome card indeed from the sounds of things. So if I ever get back on that Game Boy Color TCG game, that's going to be my goal now, is to try to get a Mr. Mime and to utilize it to my advantage.
Oh, it's
But no, my number 2 is one you've already listed, and that is Pincer.
Nice.
So yeah, need I say more? I think I did get him as a card. I'm not sure if I got him from my cousin or not, honestly, but I definitely did get the card. So I probably did get it from my cousin. Actually, wait, no. Now that I'm thinking about it, it's in a foreign language, I think. So maybe I didn't get it from him, but. But I did, however, play with it on the Game Boy Color in the TCG world, and it definitely got me more than a lot of prizes as well, which I got to give props to. So, all right, what about your number 2, Chris?
My number 2 is Pincer's counterpart in Gen 1, Scyther.
Yes.
Scyther, one of the coolest cards in the set, one of the coolest Pokemon in all of Gen 1. And all the Pokemon, for that matter, just look so flipping cool. And this card was so good. For 1 energy, you double the attack of his only attacking attack. His only damaging attack, which Slash for 3 colorless energy does 30 damage. So, turn 1, you play Grass, Swords Dance. Turn 2, you get a double colorless energy. Turn 2, you're doing 60 on turn 2. That is crazy. Crazy good. And I can't really say much else besides that. He was just such a good card. And a basic at that? That's crazy.
Not true. Yeah.
And it is my second favorite holographic card of the set. That was actually my very first holographic from Jungle Set was a holographic Scyther. Fun fact.
I guess Scyther wasn't as common in the Game Boy Color games, but he does sound pretty awesome.
Oh,
So,
very much.
and plus, I have a hard time hearing Scyther, not thinking about that episode with Scyther and Electabuzz and Pikachu with the ketchup.
Pikachu.
Yeah.
I
I know,
I don't
right?
like Pikachu, but I feel so bad for him. Especially when
Uh,
that bottle of ketchup broke and he was just sulking the entire time.
I love it. That episode was golden. If y'all hadn't seen it, y'all need to find a way to see it. I'm pretty sure Pokemon TV has it on their app. So,
Probably.
all right. So with that
But
being said, I think we're ready to move on to number one. What about you, Chris?
I am ready. Drum roll, please.
Okay, my number one is Jolteon. Because once, like, Jolteon was easy to get out there. You know, you get the Eevee out there, you evolve it, wham, it's Jolteon. And Jolteon starts, kicking butt and taking names or what have you. And it has been known to give me a few prize cards. I really loved playing with that particular card in general because once it was out there, I was usually golden because it was always my goal in the TCG game on the Game Boy Color to get Jolteon out there as fast as I could, just because he was able to get out there pretty quickly, and once he was out there, but that's usually when I won the game. But I didn't actually get this card in real life. I don't think I ever did, for that matter. And it's kind of disappointing when you think about that. But yeah, I just remember how good he was competitively whenever I played him on the Game Boy Color, and that's why he's my number one. What about you, Chris? What's your number one?
Well, sticking on Jolteon for a minute, I don't think I ever owned that card either. Oh, sadness. The
I know,
realization just hit me hard like a Mack truck.
right? Yeah.
I mean, I'm not the biggest Jolteon fan, but it had a sweet artwork and it was decent.
Oh yes. Yes.
But my number one should go as no surprise to people who know me, which not a lot of people know me, so take with that what you will. My number one is Vileplume.
Yep.
Vileplume is by far my favorite holographic of the set. Has been my favorite holographic period ever since it came out, ever since I pulled it. The card itself is just gorgeous. He has good HP. He has 80. Grass type, my favorite type. His ability, once during your turn before you attack, if you can flip a coin, if heads, you can heal a damage counter from one of your Pokemon. Doesn't matter which one. Yeah, it would have been nice if it wasn't a flip, you could just automatically heal a damage counter. But this is back then, so. And back then,
Yeah.
you couldn't use abilities if you were asleep, confused, or paralyzed, which, But it's attack 3 grass energy, Piddle Dance. Flip 4 coins. This attack does 40 damage for each heads. Flipping all 3 coins, getting heads, there was nothing that you could not knock out. Okay, besides Mr. Mime. But other than that, there's nothing that you were not knocking out, no matter what it was. Charizard, gone. Blastoise, gone. Venusaur, gone. Mewtwo, gone. Zapdos, gone. All of it, just gone. Yeah, it does confuse itself right after the attack's over, but there's a thing for that. Full heal. You run 4 of those because you can only run 4 copies of a certain card in your deck. Let's just say Vileplume was played a lot. Vileplume was taken care of very well until an unfortunate incident that saw all of my cards that I had, my brother gave me, and my cousin gave me, all getting stolen. But besides that, I did recently order one offline just to have it in my collection. I love this card that much. Still my all-time favorite holographic card, and nothing will ever beat it. Nothing. It's just a beautiful card. It's a damn good card, and it's grass type, my favorite type. So yeah, it ticks all the boxes. So that is our list for the jungle set. So Ty,
Yep.
how'd you enjoy this list?
This list has been pretty educational. It's making me think I really need to get back on that Game Boy Color game. I didn't even download it on the Virtual Console, but I probably should. It's only $5. I can get that on my 3DS. So.
I got it on emulator, but I need to actually get it on my 3DS because I don't even touch my 3DS anymore, and this would give me perfect reason to.
I know, right?
And if we could actually, do Wi-Fi battles on there like they implemented in red, blue, and yellow, and silver, and gold without link cables, we should battle each other. I'd be down for it. Would you?
Oh, yeah, sure. Totally.
Awesome. Well, that is a wrap for this episode, everybody. Do you want to do it, or do you want me to do it, Ty?
The only part I remember is be sure to like, comment, subscribe, or report if we manage to offend you somehow. And
Don't forget
I can't remember.
Don't forget to call us idiots in the comments section. Dislike, unsubscribe, death threats. All the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
But we will be back next week. Not sure what day, but we will be back next week for another great set, which will be what, Ty?
It will be, let's see, what comes after Jungle? I think it was Fossil, was it?
Correct. We will be doing our top 10 for Fossil. So that's it for the Pedal Dance Podcast for this episode. Hope you liked it. Like I said, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment. Give us mean faces, whatever you want to do. But as of right now, this is Chris and Ty. And we will catch you in the next episode. Until then, later.